other grants. Okay. So I need an approval or motion for approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Anyone second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. I need a motion for approval of the minutes.
All motion,
Second.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Carries. And now we'll move on to our report from police department and traffic enforcement.
We have the report for July. Looking at data back in June, we're right about the same as we do for the summer normally. Crashes go up, our OWI enforcement normally go up during the summer as well. We're doing more grants and more officers out there. But we're turning about the same as we did last summer. Same problem areas are typically dealing with, as far as crashes, military and Shawano. The one that popped up was University Way. Few more crashes there. And then, Maine Mason, the typical ones we normally get there. A lot of those are signal ones, which we typically see along Mason as well, like from Webster, along East Mason. The crashes are signal ones, and we force those as best we can, yellow light violations and stuff. And then the quarterly serious crash and fatal crash summary. So we had a busy quarter so far. Only one of these crashes was fatal, but the other two look like they may be. So they were being reconstructing two of them, and Brown County assisting on reconstructing one. First we had talked about before was Velp and Wilson. Two cars were racing eastbound and collided with a van that was pulling off of Wilson, turning left. Due to the excessive speed on the vehicle that collided with the van, they forfeited the right of way. So that driver, as well as the other driver that was racing the other vehicle, are both being criminally charged. The second one was fatal. That was on May 17th. We had two motorized bicycles that collided on 1300 block of Cherry Street. And those were just regular bicycles that were homemade with gas motors on them. That's a new thing that we're seeing in town. All over the county, actually, we're seeing it. And we talked in our countywide traffic safety commission about that. We used to help deal with that, but a lot of it's an education thing, and try to be safe on these. I mean, they're things that need to be, depending on what people are making. Some would need to be registered, some need to have insurance on them. This type of motorized bicycle need to have a license to be operating it. So it's a lot of education that we're doing with people that they're building these, and even scooters are getting faster and faster, and getting into a category where some of our motorcycles. But that one was a fatal crash. I'm still working on the reconstruction on that. And then the 10 days later, we had a motorcycle versus car on West Mason Locust, and that was failed to yield on the car's part. Struck a motorcycle, and serious injuries, looks like non-fatal injuries for the upper of the motorcycle. Question, any of that?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
University Avenue, University Way, it's not called University Avenue. It was this, you're doing this in the next 30 days? I know we're looking at 2 months here.
So that the state looks at, so we program in, these are the intersections that tells us based on previous data that there's a high probability in the next 30 days of crashes. So they're looking at over the past several years when crashes occurred. So that they're looking at, there's a probability that there'll be more crashes there in the next 30 days.
So from now, the next 30 days.
It would be from when I did the report, so it would be during the month of July.
So July is almost over, so how's it going?
I have not looked at that.
When you do look at it, could you see how many of these are U-turns?
Yeah, so I could go in at each one and look, analyze each crash on its own and see what the cause was for that.
The word of U-turn is being brought up to me quite a lot here, and also the one by festival.
I wouldn't think, I would say signals are probably the vast majority there.
All right.
Yeah, just my experience, I work in crashes.
A lot of
Signals
crashes.
to the drives, so.
There's a grant period in the next, by August 15th for the city to request from the Wisconsin DOT. It's typically up to 1.25 million. And I have 3 intersections that I propose to upgrade, Mather and Ashland, so it's fully actuated. Video detection and ped buttons. Walnut and Broadway, because I know that the Mason Street Bridge construction project, and that's one of the few downtown intersections that's not. And University Way, to get longer monotubes out there, the flashing yellow arrows. And probably modifying that island that goes towards Riviera. I wanted that modified when the festival development was done, but they didn't, because it's a square end island now, so when you take a left turn. You have to take it, you gotta go out into the intersection quite far in order to make that turn, and we just round that island nose off a little bit so they can make that turn at a better speed, you know, as opposed to slowing down terribly, because then they get hit by the outbound motorists, you know, left turners. You want to give them to clear that intersection. So the DOT has identified that to us also as a possible location. The city has currently no left turn restrictions at any signal, where it's protected only. So when the arrow comes up, it would go to a red arrow.
Sure.
And then, but I'd have to dig deeper into the crashes to know that they're not, you know, was that left turn on a permissive phase? Was it at night? You know, when was that turning movement? So, but we're hoping to get that grant. I've gotten the last 2 that I've requested, and this will be the last one. And so hopefully we can get those 3 intersections upgraded.
Thank you.
Any other questions or urgent? Okay, can I get a motion to receive and place on file?
Motion to receive and place in file. Thank you.
Perfect. And yeah, just now that I see there are a bunch of you, I'd like to welcome Alders Hutchison, Prophet, and Grant to our meeting today. So I know you guys will hop in at some point. All right, so we have an initial request.
Can Grant hear us?
Can you hear us? Yep.
Okay, perfect. So we have an initial request with consideration with possible action on the addition of flashing beacons to the crosswalks of Bay Highlands Drive and Bay Settlement Road, and Highland Center Drive and Bay Settlement Road. Alders or Tom, do you have any comments on this one?
This is Alder Grant's district, so.
Yep, and actually there is a resident on the link. I submitted this request because I've had residents complain. So we were able to get the crosswalks painted last year, but Bay Settlement is turns into what's popularly known as Huron, and it is a very high speed 4-lane busy road. And Bay Highlands, the neighborhood, is actually separated by Huron, so a lot of people do walk across it to go to the other side. But I definitely see some value in some flashing beacons. I've had a lot of complaints of cars not stopping even with the painted crosswalks. So there's kind of just the idea that the crosswalks were helpful, but not enough to make sure our residents are safe crossing that road. But again, I'm sure the resident can speak more to it as they deal with it more often.
Hi, my name is Angela. I live right on the.
Angela, just 1 second. I need a motion to open the floor.
Sorry.
And I need you to give us your name and your address as well. And do I get a second? Yes.
Angela Westfall, 3490 Bay Highlands Drive. I live right next to the intersection of Huron and Bay Highlands Drive, so I daily walk to the other side. I walk at least twice a day over to their side. Numerous times people do not stop. I've been stuck in the middle of the intersection waiting for cars to go by. And as Elder Grant had stated, it's a speed limit of 35. If you would do speed traps there, I would be surprised if anybody's going under 45. I'm walking with a dog also as I'm crossing the road, so it's dangerous, and I've had people flip me off because I'm standing in the middle of the road. I've got people honking their horns at me, and I'm like, people, there's yellow lines. You're supposed to stop and let me walk, but they don't. I can guarantee you that one of these days there will be an accident because people do not stop. That's
Grant.
We just recently added that sidewalk on the east side of the street from Humboldt up to the interchange. And during that time, we created these two crosswalks, one at Bay Highlands to the north, closer to the interchange. They can cross at the signal. And then this one is kind of, too close that we wouldn't want to hold up traffic that just came off the interstate. But the second one further to the south, they're both Bay Highlands Drive, or one of them is maybe Highland Center Drive. In Bay Highlands Drive, so the furthest one south, and we only painted a crosswalk across, one side of it. We did install RFBs at Sitka. And the signs go with these. So I mean, the motorists are notified that there are pedestrians. There is a continental crosswalk marking. It's just a matter of how much more engineering do we want to do up front versus enforcement. We've always had complaints on Huron Drive about, it's a young street, so it's designed for future heavy traffic, but it's currently carrying a lot less. In RFBs, we're gonna run about $15,000, 15 to 18,000. For the RFB assembly itself, and then to do the construction of the bases. So if we were to say, yes, we want RFBs there, we'd have to refer to INS because we don't spend money in traffic. We can refer that we want them at this location, and then INS can make the decision of whether we're going to spend the money and or who's going to budget it, because it's not installation of RFBs isn't, reconstruction of traffic signals in the budget, in the capital improvement into other programs, but not RFBs. So once we decide we want them, we have to then find a way to pay for them.
I think I need a motion to close the floor.
Motion to close.
Thank you. Second. Excellent. Are there any other ideas, Tom, of something you could do other than an RFP?
I believe we have advanced, I'd have to go out there and look, but I believe we have the advanced signs and the signs at the crosswalks. I can verify that our sign shop has signs where I wanted them, not too far around the corner, because there's some of them that the sidewalk was being built, but I can make sure that the signs are clearly visible. Then it gets to be an Operation Frogger, where we go out and just say, we get that a lot, even at the RFB locations on military. I had to put yield to pedestrian here because people were getting flipped up because they push the button and they go to walk out, and somebody would go racing in front of them and say no, and the guy said, that's enough, they got to yield to me. But how do you force a person to yield to a pedestrian? I mean, the pedestrian can throw their hands up in the air and the motorist can flip them off, and we're at a stalemate. And at least on military we have a large 16-foot 20-foot refuge. They need to cross one, they can cross one side then the other. We're over here, we got a turn lane, so their only refuge is a 6-foot island, or they just wait in the turn lane because there's relatively low volumes turning onto Highlands Drive, so they do have a place to rest. But they shouldn't have to, when a motorist sees a pedestrian in the crosswalk, they're supposed to yield. That's the bottom line. Whether you're at the beginning of the crosswalk entering the road, or whether you're in the middle of the road. Definitely when you're in the middle of the road, there shouldn't be any excuse to not see a pedestrian and yield.
So what's the speed limit on that?
Speed limit on Huron Road is posted 35. And that's a county trunk highway owned and maintained by them. But any pedestrian enhancements are done by us. So if we want to do signs and mark, I had to put up the pedestrian signs. I have to paint the crosswalk. So all the county maintains is the roadway itself and the bike lane markings. So
Is there any signs on there that say yield to pedestrians?
no. you know, it would be an advance of the crosswalk, yield here
Right.
to pedestrians, but I've only put those at 2 locations so far in the city. And that's on Military at the trail crossing and Shawano at the trail crossing, because it's the same trail, same types of streets. And they both have RFBs. So I kind of threw everything I got at those 2 locations. I got continental markings, I got RFBs in the outside and in the middle. And I have yield here to pedestrian. There's really not much more I could do, other than somebody says, get the RFBs and put them up over the road, you know, like Club Kohler and on Lineville, you know, you'll see those, but that's just the, you know, we can only take so many steps before voters just have to follow the rules of the road.
Do we keep track of how many people cross the streets or no?
No, we don't have any way to find out how many times that button has been pushed. You know,
You know, is it 5
normally the
people or
RFBs that we install in
200
the city are
crossing?
generally for the general public, everybody to use, you know, whether it's a school area, a trail. You know, this is getting, I understand that these residents want to walk from one side of the subdivision to the other. I mean, forever it was called Bay Half Lands, because we knew when we shoved a big street like here on down the middle of it, we were gonna split this subdivision that kind of came early in half. And that's exactly kind of what we did.
You know, this doesn't help us in this instance, but I'm new here, so I'm gonna ask a lot of clarifying questions. But I understand this highway it's a county trunk highway, but yeah, I was just doing a little bit of research and I agree with what you said that it's woefully underutilized. The traffic counts are only 6,000 or so according to the
Right,
yeah,
right.
and curious about, you know, when a new county trunk highway goes in like this, does the city have any like input? I know
We had a
input.
lot of input in planning, you know, we look at what developments, I mean, 10 years ago, there was gonna be a Walmart over there where the tower is at Finger Road. You know, if that Walmart would have went in, there would have been 20 other businesses that followed it, and that's when the traffic, you know, when this was developed, they always called it the Packerland of the east side. It's Packerland Drive. It hasn't gotten there yet, because Packerland Drive is 50+ years old, and this one is only 10 or so, and it just hasn't had any of the build up businesses on the side, large hub businesses that would drive traffic higher.
Yeah, that's yeah, right. That makes sense to me. It's frustrating that, you know, the source of the issue is really the design of the street is too big.
In this street, they did put some chicanes to it. It's not a straight street by any means, but there has also been, well, I bet you there's been half a dozen, 3-4 fatalities, you know, the crotch rockets going around the corner, one at Finger Road, the other one, I think at Woodside where it comes in, you know, right at the curves. When you're going 90 miles an hour, it's hard to regulate when the posted speed is 35. So, you know, there isn't, I'm checking with the DOT to see if there's warrants for these RFBs, you know, to say how many pedestrians, how many versus how many cars to justify the price. And I haven't seen that. They just tell me how to install them on the side of the road, what kind of signs, what kind of pavement marking, how long the crossing time should be, but not a warrant to say 20 pedestrians versus 5,000 cars, it's warranted, you know.
Hopefully in time, they're really new, so hopefully in time there'll be some better data.
Right.
Maybe they're just chasing some kind of metrics that just don't have measured yet. Interesting.
Any other discussion?
So do we find that the paint helped? I mean, we don't know that. We really don't know that.
I don't know if we know that Alder Grant or
Um,
pavement markings and the signs, because we just recently installed those within the last year.
Yes, it was within the last year. And a couple of things just from listening to the conversation. This area, I have asked for heavier patrolling. It's literally known as the Huron Raceway. We have organized street racing, like you said, with the motorcycles. The issue is, Chief Davis has said, we will never pursue a high-speed chase with a motorcycle because it's not worth the liability. And that's what we're seeing out here. One other thing to keep in mind is the west side is landlocked. So I understand we don't have growth right now, but the reality is we're going to see future growth out in this area. Alder Hutchinson and I are seeing that. There's a lot of subdivisions going up. I myself have 2 developments in my immediate neighborhood going up that's very close to Bay Highlands. So growth is definitely going to happen. And I know even Chief Davis has reached out to the county for help with patrolling as well because it's like a shared road. So we've had speed boards out there. So there are reports with speeding, if any of that helps. But as far as I know, you brought up, is patrolling more worth it? We have been doing that, if I'm not mistaken.
Sorry, one more quick clarifying question, just spitballing here. Does the, just, you know, from my understanding also, does the city have any ability to, like, in a street like this, kind of like longish term, close a lane with, you know, traffic cones or road closed signs of any kind, given that it's so underutilized? Let's assume the money were no, I don't assume money were out there, but do we have the legal authority to long-term close a couple of these lanes?
Yeah.
To reduce it to 2?
Traffic Tech and PED doesn't have the authority, but they could make
Right.
that recommendation to INS, because you're obviously gonna be spending money, and INS, if INS approved it and or discussed it, they would most likely have to refer to Brown County, you know, because we'd be modifying their route.
Okay.
And obviously cones won't work with plows, so you'd have to physically go down that roadway and that outside lane crosshatch it, you know, and temporarily close it somehow. You know, just so we don't interfere with the county's plowing operation or anything else, but we don't want anybody to use this lane until it's you know, needs it.
Right.
But at 6,000, 8,000 cars, a 1-lane facility would function.
Right.
It's just that it was built for 75 years old for the future growth. So once it grows up, it'll be more like Packerland. And once you add enough cars, it'll slow down, you know, just by nature.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think. I'm obviously not a traffic engineer, but I am an engineer of a different type, and you know, I understand that the tendency seems to be, you know, we'd rather overshoot it than undershoot it, right? In general, for traffic capacity purposes, but if I were Supreme Lord of the universe, I would, you know, I would love more conversation about, okay, but what's the risk of undershooting it? Undershooting it also has its own risk, which is more dangerous. Cars drive faster. And it's way more dangerous for pedestrians. The road is huge. So I just looked, it's 90 feet of crosswalk. So it's a long time to be exposed to traffic.
With the dog.
And especially with dog, yeah, I walk my dog too. So obviously I'm pontificating here. I'm a little bit nervous right now, but you know, in the future, I would love, you know, more conversation about that in streets like this, what the risk is. Overshooting it by a lot, because this street I looked earlier is built 20 years ago. So I understand it's you know, young by street standards, but you know, clock is also taken by that's 20 years ago. Sorry. I'll hope we can get back to stuff.
So does anyone have a motion or any other questions or comments?
I think I have a motion, so. It's actually a twofold motion. So this body can request the painting and adding signs without INS. My motion would be to make sure that the painting is up to date at these 2 crosswalks. Let's put some flags on top of the signs that say pedestrian. And also let's put yield to pedestrians as well out there for now. So that'd be my first part of the motion. My second part would be to refer the remaining of this for the flashing beacons to INS to see if they can put that into a future budget. The plan.
So we have 2.
Sound good? Part of it we can do, part of it they can do. So
Yeah, we just painted them with continental marking, so I know the markings are good. I just have to make sure that the signs are as visible as they should be, the advanced ones and the ones at the crossings.
and we put the flags up too.
And we generally don't flag things, but we can. I mean, it's just because they wear out and people say, hey, your flags are wearing out, put up new ones, and it's just like, hey, we just put them up when we first introduce, you know, something new to a motorist or to a pedestrian. But it's early enough that we can add the flags, and we can find a location for the yield here to pedestrian might be a little strange because the both of the crosswalks at Highland Center and Highland Center Drive are on the south side, you know, sort of the southbound vehicle would, you know, we don't want them stopped in the middle of the intersection. They have to stop north of, you know, north radius, you know, for the south crosswalk.
Or a sidewalk approaching or something, you know, so, some type of sign, so.
Yeah,
So we have a motion on the floor to check the flags, paint. And to refer to IMS, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Alright.
Any opposed? Number 30.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's right.
yeah,
Okay, that's good.
Thank you also.
all right.
Thank you. In consideration with possible action on the request by Alders Jim Hutchison and Bill Morgan for the need for a crosswalk at the intersection of Finger and Alpine Roads.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm here with Cindy Watska. She lives on Finger Road, and in a minute, I guess, you know, more. But at Finger Road and Alpine, there is an apparent need to install some crosswalks, but I say but, the need is there, as you'll hear, and I guess let's pass the memo out. Cindy prepared a memo with pictures to show the intersection and her observations. The intersection is it's within a half block of Mason and Alpine, which is located south of this intersection. So it entails some issues that a normal crosswalk maybe wouldn't encounter, like traffic backup and whatnot. But based on Cindy's observations, there's something needed there. And it's needed because Finger Road is a long road, and on the east side of Alpine, it goes for a while. It kind of ends, and there's an outlet to the north, and it winds back around. To the west, it goes for a block, and then it intersects another road. So it's kind of Finger Road is kind of a closed off road, so there's not a lot of opportunity for people to take a different route. There's sidewalk on the west side of Alpine, but not on the east side. Okay, so that's another issue, that hurdle. And in this memo that Cindy Watska put together, she does a good job describing what she's encountered, and then she pictures the intersection looking north, Alpine and Finger, and then a proposed alternative with a crosswalk with a little thing in the middle. I don't know what you.
Those in-street pedestrian crossing
Yes,
signs.
thank you, sir. And we would be looking at one crosswalk, not two there, just to provide access. Now, there's no crosswalk in the intersection to the north either. It's not until you get to a stop sign 3 blocks away that you have finally a crosswalk. So I guess based on that, I would ask to open the floor.
Absolutely.
Motion open for.
Motion kind of a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Okay, so would you please just present your observations?
We also need your address.
Oh, yeah.
Name and address.
Cindy Watska, 2706 Finger Road.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yep, so you all have a copy of this, and as Alder mentioned, you can see the picture here, and it almost appears more like a country road. There's a lot of traffic. I work from home 3 days a week, so I can see, and I'm home on the weekends, obviously, I can see the traffic coming down my street, Finger Road. They're trying to get to the park. A lot of them, I don't know what everyone's where they're trying to go, but I've seen a near miss just the other day with a young boy on a bicycle, trying to cross the street. Just missed a car that was coming through. They come off of Mason Street very fast around that corner onto Alpine. I've also assisted a family up the road that has 4 children. They've got kids that are starting to ride bikes. They've got little ones in strollers. So they're juggling a lot. They're trying to get across that road. You've got cars coming around that corner quickly. And as I see them come down the road, I go out to help stop the traffic. So I would definitely like to see at least what I'm proposing here in the second picture, where we have at least pedestrian signs, the painted walkway, and then I missed what you called that center.
In-street pedestrian sign.
Okay, in one of those, so at least a basic start without doing the flashing beacon lights. And hopefully, you know, less cost going this route to have more awareness that cars, you need to yield when there are people walking across the street. And we have a park right before you get to Edison Middle School. So I know a lot of that traffic is heading to that park.
I don't have any for Cindy, but I have one for you.
What's that? Well, like I said in that packet, when I sent it out, the only way that we can paint a crosswalk from one side of a street to the other is we have to have a pedestrian landing pad, an ADA pad, and sidewalks going from it. So since that's the only corner, you know, there is no sidewalks over here.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't paint a crosswalk across this street unless we build sidewalks.
Well-
Basically, you know, in sidewalks, I guess we can determine how many or how many feet of sidewalks, but you're crossing Finger Road only to go right back into Finger Road. You know, because you're a pedestrian, you got no sidewalks. I passed out the safe right, a document from the Safe Bike and Pen Study they did in 2019.
Mhm.
And you'll see it recommends a ton of sidewalks over in that area, a
Mhm.
ton. But of course, the city, you know, the only way to get sidewalks installed is having an alderman request it, because it's tough because the residents have to pay for that sidewalk. You know, I mean, it's. That's the thing is the motion is we can't paint the crosswalk, but we can refer it to study to determine if sidewalks are needed and if the alderman wants to put it in, but sidewalks come with an assessment. You know, and then it gets referred to INS. And INS would, if the alder and everybody says, yes, we agree, letters will go out to all those residents and say, you know, you've got 75 feet linear feet, the sidewalk is gonna be $1,500, you know, you either hire a contractor or the city will do it and pay for it or put it on your taxes.
Sure.
So, but I mean, I would think at a minimum to put sidewalk or a crosswalk here, you would have to have sidewalks down Alpine Drive from Shirley to Mason, you know, on that side of the street that's missing it.
Yeah, my neighbor recently just told me, because we were wondering about that without having a sidewalk. And she has seen in 2 different locations, somewhere near Manitowoc Road, and I don't remember the other cross street, that they actually have no sidewalks, but they do have the crosswalk.
Yeah, I'd have to see where that location is and delete it. No, we used to have them over on Laverne over by Baird School also, and legal said if you have some and you know where they are, delete them or you have to build a ramp. In the old days, we would build just a ramp to get them and then they go right back onto the street.
Okay.
Today with the safe route and, you know, pedestrian plan, which recommends all these sidewalks, I always refer to that and then say, this is where all these sidewalks are supposed to be. And there's not much funding for it unless it's a real public walkway, like a trail or through a school or through a new destination. So,
Well, and technically that is also to a school because of the.
right,
school.
and that's why when we just, not too long ago, 10, 15 years ago, we put this sidewalk in.
Mhm.
And that was because Preble School was no longer gonna bus students that lived south of Mason Street. But the school district had determined that Mason Street was a known hazard. crossing.
Yeah.
So the school district, I think, paid for these sidewalks, in this area between Finger and Mason and over here, just so they didn't have to bust those kids anymore. They said, well, we gave you a safe crossing. We added ped buttons, we added a crosswalk, or we had a crosswalk, and now we have limited sidewalk, not enough to do what you want to do up here at Finger, because we only have it on one side. We'd have to have sidewalks on both sides, and then we'd probably want some sidewalks leading off of Finger, at least a couple lots, to get the pedestrians to get off the street, up onto the sidewalk, and then, you know, cross where they should. And
Is there a minimum sidewalk length or like? I think, I mean, I knew this would be an impediment because there's no ramp on the east side.
right,
Like, if you installed one lot length. And so people would get off the sidewalk one lot length away from Alpine. You know what I mean? So.
I mean, back here, if
Yeah.
we were in a sidewalk back a certain distance, you know, 2 lots, and says, all right, now you're up on here, and now you can cross
Right,
over.
because right now they're just walking in the street and they
Right.
get to the street. I mean,
No,
that's not the best.
no,
And see, there's the sidewalk there.
right.
So is there not like a way we can put a ramp in on the east side and then just go for a lot? And then bring them to the street?
I think INS would have to determine, INS, and I ranked the recommendation to INS, and I'd have a hard time not looking at that safe, right? You know, where they say we recommend sidewalks on both sides of Alpine Drive from Mason Street all the way up to Deckner.
Right,
And we recommend them going down Tyrolean. Oh, they're all over there. There's thousands and thousands of feet of sidewalk that, according to the safe bike and ped plan in the school, that are lacking in this area.
right.
You know, so I'm like, well, I can use this as a plan, try to put it into real life. But if somebody says, I don't like the plan, can we just go one lot deeper and something happens down the road? You know, the Finger Road used to be the county trunk highway. Obviously, it's not
Right.
anymore. They built Mason Street in the 70s and
Right.
offset it. But it is relatively close to Mason. Again, is there something that we could do on Alpine Drive itself? You know, with our traffic calming policy, we have allowed us to do something on those streets. I mean, Alpine Drive doesn't carry 2-way or 2-lane, anything more than 2-lane traffic. When they get up to Mason, they're probably getting in the outside lane between Finger, you know, to take a right turn
Mhm.
and a left turn, but they're not traveling at 4 wide. You know, down the corridor. Could we put a white line there to make it feel a little tighter, make the pedestrians feel like they can walk out to at least the parking lane? And then they're only crossing 24 feet instead of
Right. the whole
48
way.
feet like they are today.
Um,
You know, and that would have to go from Deckner all the way down, you know,
Mm.
probably all the way down Alpine Drive to where it hits Vanderbilt or Van Buren, and or something.
Okay, so. I guess I'm trying to figure out a compromise that's both safe and meets kind of a plan.
Right. And that in-street pedestrian sign is we only usually use those at school zones and at special events, because they're meant to be only out there when needed.
Oh,
You know, so a school goes out there and puts it out there at 7 in the morning, and they pick it up at 8:30 and they put it up again there at 3, you know, Preble. Franklin does it, a bunch of the schools do it. Sometimes they don't pick them up other than morning and at night.
Right.
But at least that way, the in-street pedestrian tells you that there's heavy crossing during this period of time. And there's nobody that's gonna go out there and move this 60-pound weighted pedestrian sign.
I do see them on Riverside Drive. That is where I took that picture, and they don't remove them. They're just permanently there.
Yeah, that's Riverside Drive outside of the city.
I understand. that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We like to use them limited, so they're effective. You know, when you don't see the sign, you don't expect to see pedestrians. That's why we only use them for like special events. If there's a concert over at the YWCA, we put them out there when they used to have a concert series at noon over there. We put it there. At the schools, we ask them to put them out and take them down. So they're only used limited, you know. I think the only one that we have semi-permanently mounted is at Webster and Greenview.
If none of these suggestions work, do you have another suggestion that could potentially help?
Within the next 3 years, I'm hoping that the TID created around Garrett Bader, it's East Town Mall, is gonna generate enough money, and I think it will, for us to reconstruct the 2 signals, Alpine and Edgewood. And when we do that, we could possibly extend the sidewalk on that one side, and we'd make that, at least that intersection better, so hopefully it travels better. I mean, I don't think anybody on Finger Road wants to take a sidewalk over to Mason to just across the street, or they don't want to walk up 3 blocks to the north and cross that mountain. You know, but that's their option right now, without sidewalks in that area. Is that, or if we want to start getting into these visually narrow roadways and painting a 6-inch white line, you know, down the curb lane from Finger Road all the way to Deckner. You know, just to, you know, before I started doing that painting again, because we did do it in the late 80s, early 90s, and then we put a moratorium on it, because I think Marcel asked for every street in her district that would be classified as a collector or a minor arterial to be painted, and then we're like, oh boy. You know, I don't know that they're gonna lose their effectiveness, but we want to collect data on a street like this at 2 or 3 locations and say, here's what its speed is. And so if we painted it, it's like, all right, here's what the speed did. So before we paint a ton of streets throughout the city thinking that we're doing it really good. But on a street like Alpine, you know, we're limited to what kind of traffic counting we could do other than lines and or I mean, at Newberry or something like that, we could make a bump out, you know, to make it narrower, you know, to get through.
So when you said this TID about putting in sidewalks, would the landowner still be responsible for the sidewalks?
Yeah, the TID,
that time?
the TID would only cover the improvements of the traffic signal upgrade. So I told them that if the next 3 years I can get $700,000, I can rebuild those 2 signals. But yeah, we're using a grant right now in a very, very expensive sidewalk systems going in on Manitowoc Road. But it's cheaper for the residents to build the sidewalk or the city to build it. When we go outside, we have to pay a consultant, design and then building, and by the time it gets done, it's like, holy cow, the sidewalks are quite expensive per lineal foot compared to just the city doing it. And this one right here would also be unique. But I don't think the city charges we pay the extra cost for like this. There's going to be a retaining wall all the way down here, you know, to hold back that thing, you know, and the resident isn't expected to pay. You know, I mean, that sidewalk just in this one block could be $250,000 by the time you put the sidewalk in and by the time you built a 4-foot retaining wall that, you know, because you need it.
Have you had any conversations with the neighbors over there about sidewalks?
Sidewalks? No,
Yeah.
not there, east, across the highway. So, yeah, there's been no discussion about sidewalks. I'm wondering though, if you rebuild Mason and Alpine, could you theoretically then go like a block to the Finger Road and just do the ramps, you know? And so there's access to get up to Mason Street, but at the same time, you build the crosswalk across. Could you do that?
I think the only sidewalk that I'd be able to include with the Mason Street would be to put a sidewalk on this side of the street. You know, up to this is Figure Road looking, this is Mason Street here.
All right.
So
Yeah, that's what
it's
I'm
already
saying.
got sidewalks over here. Is it, I might be able to include it
Yeah,
and or
for that block.
for that block, or they might
And then
just
you
say
might be able
you, I mean, I only plan on rebuilding the signals, but the ped accommodations that we weaseled in kind of over at Mason and Alpine is less than desirable. That's why I want to rebuild it if somebody gives me the money.
So I have a question for you. So
There's a ped
technically,
button right here, you know, but a handicap or a disabled pedestrian could Oh, they could actuate it if they reach over, have really long arms, but technically we shouldn't have a ped button in the grass. But we want to make it a fully actuated intersection, and we put a ped button here, there, and we've just put it all the way around, so at least they can push a button. But ideally, we'd want to have a sidewalk and a ramp there, and we will when we rebuild the signal.
So is it technically still a sidewalk in that intersection, even though it's not marked? The first one we're talking about? Even though it doesn't have sidewalks on all four corners?
You mean
A crosswalk.
Yeah, see, I mean, I could paint a crosswalk here and that's it, but that's not where they want. They want a crosswalk across.
we need a
across.
No, no, what I'm asking is that still considered a crosswalk if people are still walking there if it's not marked?
Oh, yeah, I mean, a motorist has to yield to a pedestrian whether in a crosswalk or not.
Okay,
We just
so-
mark crosswalks to help further identify.
So what I'm getting to is, could we put, please yield to pedestrians signs along this?
No,
It's a busy street, we know that, and there's a lot of pedestrian walk.
The only thing that we do, with lacking sidewalks and lacking pedestrian crossing, and what we did for Imperial down here for years, is we could put up pedestrian advance signs, pedestrians ahead. Now, whether they're in the road or whether they're crossing, but we can't mark the crossing with a down arrow. The down arrow has to be, a sign, or anything that says yield to pedestrian has to be accompanied by a visible crosswalk, which requires sidewalk, and it just kind of balloons out from there. To correct the problem, it's not as easy as just installing a sign. That's what I did on here on road. I marked it, I signed it, and I thought that we would be good. And we're less than a year out, and they're not yielding to us.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because so many people come down Finger Road. There are no sidewalks, so we can only walk on the street. And no one is not walking there because there aren't sidewalks.
Right.
And there's no other path to take, even if you went up toward the highway and around and came down on Sherry, there are no crosswalks there either to get to that park. So.
You know,
you've got-
with that TID this year, in Garrett Bader's development, he's putting sidewalks into the East Town Mall. And he's also paying to put sidewalks up to Finger Road and over to whatever this is, Ravenwood. And I don't know if they're going this way. I think they're just getting them across the street and over. But that was out of that TID that and his development. He wants to see more pedestrians walk over to the noodle. You know, he's got more and more businesses that are pedestrian friendly, Planet Fitness, all these, and there's another fitness place that's gonna be building out there. So I don't know how the East Town Mall, when it got built in the 70s, was able to, usually when you have a heavy pedestrian generator like a mall, it would come with sidewalks, or you drop a school, but there's a lot of times they just drop the school in the middle of wherever, and then they think about the sidewalks later.
So, Mr. Bader be heavy into the TID? I mean,
Yeah.
okay. So maybe if I talk to him about that intersection up there, it might help.
Yeah, I'm not sure, between Diana in our finance and whatever, in our
Right.
director, Valerie. I don't know where TID funds can be spent.
Right.
If they can say, oh, we can deflect that and use them for sidewalk improvements. It could be, I don't think any block grants are out there,
Right.
that it would qualify, We just have a study that shows sidewalks are recommended. And I'm sure when we touch the street, whether it's resurface, reconstruct, or something else, we're going to refer to these documents and say, at this time, we should really be adding sidewalks. But again, we don't assess for the roads anymore, but we still assess for the sidewalks, and they're costly.
Do you know when the street's gonna be replaced?
Finger Road?
Yeah.
I don't know, I have no idea. Every year we just bought a new piece of equipment that's kind of like Google Earth, where it drives down the road, identifies the road and gives it a rating every segment, between every street. So instead of a couple of guys walking out there and says, I think it's a 2, I think it's a 3, the computer's now going to do that for us. But where it lands in our capital improvement in the street, for resurfacing, I'm sure it'd be a resurface. I don't think it'd be a full reconstruct.
And we don't have bike lanes out there yet?
No, And Alpine Drive might be wide enough that we could leave parking and add a bike lane like we did on West.
Oh, yeah,
Point.
they're requesting a bike lane here.
Yeah,
So,
but we might be able to fit that, if it's 44 foot clear, 44 foot clear allows us a 7 foot parking lane, a 5 foot bike lane, and two 10 foot drive lanes. That's what we did on West Point and South Point. So I think both Deckner and Alpine are candidates for that. It just, I always want to have Stephanie and planning, determine, I don't want bike lanes just to start up in the middle of nowhere and then end in the middle of nowhere. So if I got a bike lane from Webster all the way to Dan's,
it looks like it goes from Finger Road to Newberry.
Yeah.
And then down
And then-
Newberry.
and then maybe they went down Newberry.
Yeah, they go down Newberry.
Yeah.
The proposed bike lanes would go all the way from Finger, Mason, north up Alpine, and then west down Decker.
Yeah.
Oh, that Deckner?
See, and if both of those streets are 44,
Right.
And Newberry as well.
I could look at doing that now. That's what we did on Irwin a couple of years ago. We did it on Radisson, where we didn't have to make any improvements or changes to the street.
So technically, people right now use it as a 4 lane during school times. If we put in the bike lanes, then it's strictly down to 1 lane.
Well, I wouldn't run the bike lane all the way to Mason Street. I usually stop it short so we can queue up the cars.
Sure.
and get them
That's
to
what they're
go
suggesting
over.
here,
Right.
Finger Road.
Right.
So can this body,
But we have had complaints of people use it as 4 lanes.
Yeah, 4 lanes.
Up by Melcor, which
Yeah.
technically they can't.
Well,
But
and
the
that,
bike lane
and that,
down there.
I'd like to go back. We went to a stop sign to a flashing beacon 15 miles an hour. The alder at the time, Alderman Graves, said, I'll take out the stop sign if you give me the flashing beacons. We gave him the flashing beacons, took out the stop sign. But the residents over on Tyrolean and back in those neighborhoods weren't happy because they still couldn't get to the park safely. Now today, we could take that stop sign out, and in fact, the safe bike and ped plan recommends the removal or suggests the removal of the stop signs at Melcor and replacing it with an RFB. Because we're really not stopping traffic to let Melcor enter the flow of traffic. We're stopping it to help pedestrians get over to the park. So an RFB would accomplish the same thing, but I think the residents think that a stop sign stops them and then they, but we're stopping 3,500 cars a day to let less than 100 or 160 in on Melcor. So it's an unwarranted stop and people have a tendency to run that stop sign or do a good hard roll through it. So we haven't brought that up. We had 3 or 4 locations that the safe bike and ped plan recommended removing the 2-way, 3-way, 4-way stops and putting up an RFB instead.
And I can pretend to be Stephanie Hummel planning. She is not here, she is sick. But as far as the TID goes, I would give Matt Buchanan or Diana a call and see what funds. I don't think I think it is an eligible expense. I think. But it's how much increment is coming out of that. It could be underwater. I mean.
Yeah, I didn't
They
have much in
generally-
it now, but
they
she said
generally-
within 2 years it would have the 700,000 that I want to take for the traffic signal. And I don't know what other improvements, it's a deferred tax to do things in and around that area. And I don't know what else qualifies, because I didn't know that our streetlights in I-43 Business Park qualified, and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, up to a mile or half a mile away, the ones leading up to it, so I started replacing a bunch of them before that TID closed out, the 25 years they usually close.
27.
27.
That one will be closing probably next year. The I-43 TID.
Yeah.
I don't know about the East Town, but as developments are going in East Town as well, that we call them the in-lots. Kind of noticed on the in-lot, we're requiring for sidewalk access. So all anticipating connecting it all. I don't know what happened in the 70s, people didn't walk anywhere or they didn't care. But they tend, our subdivision code does require sidewalks in almost every neighborhood. The council had a stretch of removing that requirement. In the 80s and 90s.
Is there a
This kind of
plan
happens.
put sidewalks on Mason? But we've seen people walking in the ditch, I mean.
Yeah, and that's, I don't think anybody will touch Mason Street until it gets reconstructed, because it's hard to put a sidewalk right next to the road.
Right.
And you can't put it on the other side of the ditch without getting rid of the ditch. Well,
Right.
you can't get rid of the ditch unless you have sewers, and the sewers require a full road rebuild.
What-
And I don't think Mason Street is, that's a city street. It's not a connecting highway. It's not a county truck highway. It's,
What's the plan on that, Mason Street reconstruct? Is that way out?
I think it's way out.
They do show it as a bike sidewalk priority area in the.
What does that
Right.
mean?
And, well, and it,
But
for.
if
for
you get the
Mason Street-
opportunity to put it
I would
into
not ride a
You know,
bike on Mason.
an alternate to Mason Street is what we could do is build sidewalks on Finger Road. Finger Road, you could build
Oh.
sidewalks from Skyline or Ravenswood or one of those streets all the way to Alpine, and you're only, 800 feet away from Mason.
Yeah.
And then when Mason gets reconstructed, I'm sure it would have, if I would envision Mason Street to have a sidewalk on one side and or just a multi-use trail on one side or the other, and they would go probably all the way to I-43,
Okay.
and all the way down to Main Street, with the sidewalk and or multi-use trail.
So I have another question for you. So if we lean towards putting in the bike lanes, do we need to get the permission from the elementary school? Cause I know they're right there.
I wouldn't need permission, but I might have to double dash the lines to make it like a bike lane that's pseudo bike lane, so. Because I'm going substandard on the parking lane. The parking lane should be 8 feet, but on a street that's 44, I got to make it 7, which the DOT says. We don't care, it's our street, you can do it, but nothing less than 7. Where if you got buses or larger vehicles known to park there, now it's a loading zone. In that usually is a minimum of 10, so a bus can actually fit. But if I took the bike lanes and just stopped them in front of Edison and just double dashed them, so that the bus, you can obstruct it temporarily. But I just have to see that it fits and then see from planning, where do I want to stop these bike lanes? I might be able to put them from Finger Road all the way to Dan's.
So, question for you then, so what if we referred us back about changing the drive of that street? That probably would help with the traffic out there,
Choosing the drive.
or putting the bike lanes in.
Yeah, I think the bike lane, then you would have, I think, a limit that you wouldn't legally be able to drive. So
No, you wouldn't, not.
You'd have to,
And that's an issue.
Right now with the pavement joints, because it's a concrete street, you could drive the outside lane, but I don't think anybody drives it 4 lanes other than when they're on Finger Road or approaching between
Right.
Finger and Mason, they spread out because.
they do a little bit at Alpine, especially when the schools are.
Yeah, Alpine
Traffic
and
center.
Newberry, because they're rights and lefts,
Yeah,
you're
Newberry
going to
and
Preble, I wanna go through, they usually jump the outside lane and they're back into the center lane within a lot or two.
Well, in Melcor they do too, then we get probably.
Well, yeah, well, in Melcor, because we're stopping so much traffic for nothing, and they're just like, well, we're gonna double up, instead of being 16 deep, why aren't we just 8? So we'll go too wide, that's another reason that we didn't like that stop sign at Melcor.
I think the bike lane would probably
Oh,
help
what do you
cross
think?
too.
It would be, I think, good to have the bike lanes. That would be the first alternative in my mind. And the next would be ultimately someday getting sidewalk in, so we could literally have a crosswalk. But that would save, I think, some crap.
Well, I think if you make.
So I hear that we would
make a
need to
motion
get
to
planning
to
involved,
have us-
right?
Yeah,
So
refer
refer
to
to
staff, and
staff.
we can come it back and make sure a bike fits.
Yeah, that would be
And
great.
then I can give you the results of it, between us and planning, we'll write up a quick memo. Saying, here's the request, here's what we found. That they will fit, and then if you wanna come back and forget about the sidewalks, I guess for now.
Sidewalk.
And then possibly if you wanna consider the removal of the stop sign at Melcor and install an RFB crossing there. It would keep the traffic moving, but the change that we're making by parking in a bike lane could reduce its speed and keep them down to 1 lane. Even through that Melcor intersection, whether they wanted to go four or not, they can't, you know, we'll let them go four wide. Or two wide approaching Mason, but not approaching the other ones, and I usually stop all of those so they can turn onto Newberry. You know, it's a dash line, so it's a bike lane and it's continues. But a motor should look and say, there's no bikes here, so I'm gonna move over into that lane to take a right on Alpine, I'm not gonna jam up the intersection just to take my right turn from the middle.
Yeah, I would use that.
But
One other quick question, was it called a launch pad?
a pedestrian landing pad.
Landing
Yeah,
pad, what would the option of having a landing pad at that corner be? Do you still need to have the bike lanes in order to put a landing pad to do a crosswalk?
Oh, I need more than, I need a landing pad and I need sidewalks on the east side of Alpine from Mason to Shirley or Mason to Shirley, and then each way on Finger Road up to one or two lots to get the pedestrians entering it to get off up onto the sidewalks and all.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if you just want to refer to staff to look at the possibility of adding a bike lane in the pavement markings on that section. And
Yes,
then,
that would
like
be
I said, you
helpful.
can, you know, that's what I'll bring back when I send you that memo.
Okay.
Of what we have as a result, then I can bring it back from referral.
I need a motion to close the floor.
Motion to close the phone.
Second, yeah, in favor. All right, and now it sounds like we have a motion if someone would like to make.
The motion to refer to staff to look into adding in the bike lanes along the street is that?
Alpine
Alpine
from
Drive.
Finger Road to Newberry of Heckner. But I know what the referral is.
We have a second. Yeah, all in
We want to
favor?
have them look at doing deck there down the Preble while they're at it.
Yeah, you know, if I'm not gonna restrict the parking. You know, and we're not gonna create an ordinance, and I'm not really changing anything other than adding markings to the road, I don't really need to ask. Anybody other than the alder in that area to say, do you mind if we're gonna paint bike lanes, you know? The only thing we don't like about the bike lanes on these two types of streets is the bike lane is going to land right on that joint.
Sure.
You know, so if it was resurfaced and it was all blacktop, you wouldn't have it, but you don't want the bike to land in it, but at least it narrows up the road to make it feel like a true two lane.
No, that'd be good.
Well, they get at least one, because I think the sidewalks go to Swiss Hill. Going east, there's a 2 block area there that
Yeah,
kind of is a gas where you could connect the bike lanes to that sidewalk.
That's Bill Morgan, but I'm sure he'd be okay with it.
And I noticed that the bike lanes, just in my personal life, and doing some planning, tend to slow people down. Just that little 6-inch white line gives people like, oh, okay, something's going on here. I feel like the Sherrills do that.
Oh.
Don't 6 inch.
right.
Right.
Yeah,
Some people don't
East
care.
Walnut for sure. And East Walnut, when they put them.
Yeah, East Walnut, but in East Walnut, I created a 6-foot buffer and then a bike lane. Because we eliminated an 11-foot lane, so I had 11 feet and 5-foot bike lane and a 6-foot crosshatch buffer, so. We don't have that. We would if we restricted parking all the way down Alpine. I mean, if they wanted to do that, then I could do a buffer in a bike lane. But I don't think they want to give up their on-street parking.
We have. So we have the motion. We have a second.
Second.
I'll hold it. Oh, yeah.
I thought we did it already.
Yeah, you already did a
Perfect.
motion in a
Excellent.
second. 'Cause he
It was the
seconded.
going back.
Yeah.
So we are on to consideration with possible action on the request by Elder Profit to designate the 700 block of North Maple Avenue no parking due to traffic concerns at the intersection of North Maple Avenue and Mather Street.
Thank you, Cindy, for bringing this up.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you. And thanks for your work.
Yeah, sure. I can go first. So this too was brought to me by a constituent who lives there. I've tried getting back in contact with her a few different times. Gave her the date tonight, but she is not, unless she's online. I don't see her here,
No,
but
I don't see anybody on.
okay, no problem. So this is right off of Mather. Mather has, I'm sure many can attest to the experiences of speeding and such on Mather. This particular intersection, she has noticed there's an alleyway that goes in the middle of it. And there is just very dense parking that happens on both sides of the streets. And then also school buses, numerous times a day. I think there's like some 4K pickups and stuff, so it's a few different times a day. Now, I did this communication a few months ago, but I've looked at it more since. I'm thinking we don't need to go fully no parking on the entirety of the block, because I know there is some multifamily in that block as well, so I don't want to fully restrict them. But by my house on Cherry Street, I noticed when City East went up, we had like a no parking from here to the corner for a neighbor that was always parking like very close. And the setup and the feel is very similar to me when I'm coming from Mather, and if I want to turn left here, it's very similar to when I'm on East Walnut turning left on Roosevelt by my house. So just, and the Google Earth picture has a car parked right where that like my neighbor used to always park. So I think if we could just restrict like one side of it for a certain chunk of it.
That's
Just for-
normally what we do, you know, if you wanted both sides from, I was thinking from 4 feet off of this driveway, no parking here to corner. And no parking here to corner approaching it, unless you only want to do one side or the other. It is a 26-foot wide street, so it's unbelievable that we still have a 26-foot wide street and allow parking on both sides. The parking is typically 8 feet, that's 16 of the 24 feet. But that's traffic calming 101, but this woman has called me several times, and I said, in order to do it, you need to get a hold of the alder, or just tell me what your communication is, and I'll tell you, they're buses that turn off them, you know, to pick up the kids, to bring them to school on both sides. This side is already no parking, this side of the street, all the way down to for its entire length. But I mean, I think that was 150 feet from Mather Street to 150 would allow, so you would kind of hinder this bigger houses parking adjacent to it, but they have a big driveway and they can go beyond it. It's just really, we're just trying to open up the intersection a little bit, and we could go as short as 50 feet. But I usually go to the lot line or to the nearest driveway, so it's kind of there's two, this Ram, she always talks about on this side of the street, and this Ram is usually on the other, but I think those vehicles are rollovers from the businesses. There's a used car lot here, and there's a used car lot here. And I think their employees are over there and parking on the side of the street as close as they can. And they just crunch it up, and she's always had concerns, and I said, well, you know, because a bus, when it gets halfway through its turn, if there's a car coming at it, somebody's got to give way, and it's like, oh, I'm not backing up onto Mather Street, so you're gonna have to pull off to the side, so. If you want to that, on both sides of that driveway, I believe it's 150 feet, but we can add that to the minutes later, you know, just say what the exact distance is, and we'll put it on a 90-day trial, and they usually go right through. I mean, a 26-foot wide street, like you said, it's kind of almost amazing how parking is ever allowed.
Right, that's kind of what I was looking at.
It's about 103.
103, yeah.
So I do have a question.
Yield ways.
So with that being 26 feet. Should we restrict parking on one side or just leave it the way it is?
I only restrict where the alder wants it restricted. I mean, if we had a problem over there more often, I mean, that subdivision's probably 100 years old. So if it works, you know, and you just hate to take away parking from residents, even though it's short term, and they're like, unless they had parties every weekend or rummage sales and really jammed up the street, and then the alder would hear about it and say, hey, we got to restrict one side of it. But we don't have to. It's really a quality of life, and if the residents are happy with it, and it's not creating a traffic hazard, I'm happy with leaving it unrestricted.
So
it is traffic only 101.
Yeah,
I was gonna say,
Slow down.
personally, I'm.
I'll make a
parking
motion
everywhere
and then
because
if
it
there's-
slows cars down.
I'll make a motion but if you want to talk about it after, then we can. I will make the motion to restrict both sides of that street from 150 feet or to the driveway at least. On both sides.
Can we get a second?
yeah, I measure, when I create the zones, I measure from the face of the curb. So 100, let's call it 110 feet.
On both
So-
sides?
On both sides of the 700 block of North Maple from Mather to 110 feet.
Well, that's my motion.
So just clarify,
Hmm.
no parking, two corner, from 110 feet from the driveway there.
On both sides of the street.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There was someone trying to get in the waiting room before. I don't know if they dropped off or not. See if they can find them. Somebody must have dropped. They were trying to get.
So I'd seen something like an M.
It was like M was trying it in the waiting room, but now they're gone. Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the next one. Thank you so much, Elder Prophet. Okay, number 6. Consideration with possible action on the request by Alder Delete to place speed bumps, speed tables at Nancy Avenue and Stevens Street.
You know anything about this one? Alder?
No, I'm sorry, I had another meeting start at 6, so.
Tom, do you have any idea of this?
I know that I've done studies back there on Boland, on Nancy, on Stephen. And we did back to traffic calming request and or always stops and they haven't met it, and that's what he wants. He wants an always stop at Nancy because it's in the middle, halfway between Bond and Dousman. And he wants speed bumps. He did show up to the public hearing for our street resurfacing because we are resurfacing that street. And basically said, this is what I want. And then when we told him how we had to go about doing something like that or requesting that, he just didn't want to hear about it. But the alder knows him personally and he's a frequent caller and he's not going to stop until he gets something. And I said, well, traffic calming does a study. And there's some legwork on that end to justify it. So he's like, put it on there and I mean, all I can do right now is go out there and make sure that there's a speed limit sign off of. And I usually don't even sign residential streets, but in this case, and it's not much of a cut through. It goes 3 blocks between Bond and Delsmere, and it's not like it's a really long, to say, well, we're gonna put a stop sign there and deter people from cutting through. They're not cutting through to begin with. So there's no advantage to using the street.
And then we habitually get complaints there, and every time we go out there, it's nothing. I mean,
And
it's getting stuck anybody. The average speed's like 23, I think the 85th percentile is like 23 miles an hour.
Yeah,
You put speed boards out there, action patrol,
this is a street that I was surprised that you even go out and do heavier enforcement. Cause
No,
usually
no, it'd be
you
good.
usually get the Taylors, the 9th Streets, the Oneidas, the Alpines, the Deckners of the world before you get into the Stevens or, that was just like, but he's got a complainer and he said, he's not gonna accept nothing. And I said, well, I mean, I said, we could receive on place. I was waiting for you guys to tell me I want a multi-way stop warrant done at Nancy. I know it's not gonna be met, but if you guys order me to do it, I'll give you the counts. Or if you want just to say, collect speed data on Stevens Street between here and here and report it back. At least it gives the alder one more chance to say, and let this person show up to the meeting and I, just because a person wants something.
Well, the guy's not even here at this meeting.
Right, and I don't know who, because I was on this and I didn't realize that, I thought it would chime in if somebody was waiting.
Yeah, for some reason, there was just a bubble in the corner.
Yeah.
Making any noise.
So
But unless
that's,
the complainant's name was something with an L.
yeah,
My motion would be to receive on place and file.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Send that.
I'm assuming we don't have the complainant's name.
But definitely, if anyone talks to Elder Delete, have them look at the traffic.
yeah, I mean, I called him and he knew right where the guy lived. He told me where he lives. He lives at the corner of Boland and Murphy. The alder does. And I couldn't get a feel from him whether he felt we really need to do something or we really need to do something because this guy is getting to be, just very persistent. And there's a way to do it. And if it doesn't warrant it, you have to accept that. I'll go out there and look and see if we speed limit sign or a curved road sign, because it does have a jog there at Nancy.
Right.
If there's anything that I can do, I'll try to do it. I'll talk to the alder.
Well, Alder Lee did what he did, his body said receive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
All right.
I think you're good.
Right.
We'll move on to 7, consideration with possible action on the request by traffic division to restrict parking on the north side of Vanderbroek Street from Quincy to a point 325 feet east of Quincy.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna shorten up that restriction, The OCR, the Office of Commissioner of Railroads, has instructed the city to notify those businesses that they need to restrict the parking, especially the semis on the street. Well, you can't just go there and ask them to not park your semi there and call it good. The OCR says you need to make a restriction. So my 300 in plus feet went all the way to this driveway. But I think they just want me to open it up so you can see the stop sign at Quincy Street, not the advanced railroad sign. Because there's two businesses here that park cars. They, 2 Hispanic businesses, I think they both are, and they park cars, they're painting cars, they're working on cars, so there's cars coming and going. So everything I saw it on the street, it's parked, which is a good traffic calming, and then you want me to undo it, but you can park within 25 feet of a rail, but that Quincy Street run is a hot topic lately to clean it up and to try to make it more friendly. In fact, the railroad has asked, and we haven't agreed to yet, to close Vanderbroek. They want us to close 4 of the 6 streets over there that come into Quincy Street to vehicle traffic, so they can eliminate the conflict between vehicles. So that's what this request is. But I think I'm gonna shorten that distance that meets the OCRs, and allows some of those businesses on street parking. So I'll probably reduce it in half to 150 feet. I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll just edit the minutes based on the measurement I take in the field.
And can I get a motion?
Motion to approve as discussed.
Excellent. Second,
Second,
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. I'm just gonna take 8 and 9 together. Termination of 90-day trial period, change the no stopping or standing restriction in the alley west of Washington Street between Pine and Cherry Streets back to a no parking zone, and add an additional disabled parking space on the east side of North Roosevelt Street, north of Main Street.
Any issues?
Nope. No
Perfect.
issues.
Okay, motion from you. Do I have a second?
second,
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, perfect. Any opposed? No, all right, that one passes.
All right, we made you sit here. This one's kind of longer than normal.
Yeah.
I actually kind of like.
I like.
I'm gonna have a biker and looker and. And like I had said, our subdivision code requires sidewalks all over, and I've lived here my whole life. We have little neighborhoods with no sidewalks. How did that happen? I found out after I started working here.
Yeah.
Right.
How it happened.
I don't know where your document is, if you want to take this over, so it's up on the screen.
I can't, well, let me walk, because I don't want to keep you guys here all night. But let me kind of give you a real brief overview. So I'm David Buck, I'm a principal planner upstairs on 6. We're closely doing a lot of things. So what we're doing right now, and we have been doing for a while, is an update to our comprehensive plan. So a comprehensive plan is a document. This is our existing one. And these 2 volumes that was adopted in 2003, written around 2000. They're supposed to be 20-year documents. So this one is time to be rewritten, and we're doing that now. They're very technical. They cover state statute. They're state statute required. So by statute, if you don't have a comprehensive plan, you can't zone land. You can't regulate land. The county takes over. Any town over 10,000 people has to have one. Any changes, and Craig knows this from going to plant or from councils and plan commissions. Any changes if you're going to change it, it doesn't match the comp plan, like a land use. It's like going from residential to commercial or vice versa or whatnot. You have to change this plan first.
There's been a lot of those.
And we do it quite a bit because it's an old plan, right?
Yeah.
And it's incredibly technical. So if you're not a planner, it's difficult to read. There's hundreds and hundreds of recommendations in here that just kind of get lost. So when we're doing our update, we kind of did a best practice. And what are people doing now? They're doing more of what we call an infographic plan. So again, all these pages boil down to this. So this is our draft plan from June 12th was the last design. And I guess I can just kind of hold it up. You should have got an email with this stuff as well. I just pulled a random page and this talks about public transportation. So it talks about buses. So it has the routes, it has recommendations. But this plan, even though statute states a 20-year document, the world is much more dynamic than it used to be when that legislation went through in around 2000. So it's a 20-year document, but it is meant to be updated about every 5 years. So instead of having hundreds of recommendations, each section would have maybe 5, 6, some of them up to 8, depending. So it's sort of the old school versus the new school. I love the old school, but I'm a planning nerd, so I love reading that stuff. Most regular people, when they read it, can't figure out where they're going or what they're reading, and it jumps back and forth. So this one is very web friendly, very easy to read. The language is very simple. It doesn't have pages and pages of statistics and charts, and we have those, but they just don't make it into this plan. It deals with certain things that statutes require: land use and development, transportation, mobility, community facilities. And those all have to be included in the plan, and they are. This one is a little bit different in that we have broken the city into planning districts. So 10 planning districts. The old plan had it at 8, I believe. But 10 planning districts, nodes and corridors. So corridor would be like, say, West Mason Street corridor. Where we have specific plans are like Military Avenue corridor, Belp Avenue, University Avenue. We have I always get this wrong, but it's authenticity. I always call it authenticity plan, which is downtown, which gives you specific recommendations in detail for those areas. And then this one has something that's kind of new, is we had 5 personality areas that jumped out. So these personality areas are just a quick analysis of the area, and then examples from around the country, around the world in some cases, of what you could do. And that's to set staff up for future planning efforts, right? So when we do a corridor plan, those 5 personality areas, like one is West Mason Street corridor, which needs attention. Oneida thinks it needs attention, the city needs attention. It's just, it's built in a day when streets were only built for boats, or for cars, period. So it has those personality areas, then it has a little implementation section, which is not filled out yet because the recommendations haven't been adopted. We began this in October of 2023, so a long time ago. We did community partner interviews, over 80 community partner interviews, key stakeholder interviews with more than 30 people, elected officials and department head roundtables, 27 of those, 6 are individuals that we talked to, 6 advisory group meetings. So we have a 15-member advisory board or commission. Actually, it's just a group that's not actually appointed. And so all that, while that was all going on, we're gathering feedback from everybody. And some of the interesting things that are in there, and alders hate to hear this, but when they did the interviews, we hired 2 consulting firms out of Chicago that came up to do it. They sometimes got different feedback from the alders, as the residents, as the department heads. And I'm like, well, wait a second, these people need to be on the same page. So that was pretty interesting. And they came through, so it's 2 companies again, one's called Altogether, and the other is Hosea Levine. They did hundreds of comp plans. They came up to Green Bay and just took 3 days and just drove around, looked at our maps, and did observations and gave us what's called an existing conditions memo from their perspective. So I grew up in town. I mean, I moved away, I came back. I always think our commercial core is downtown, right? These guys from Chicago said your commercial core is Main and Mason. So why do you think it's downtown? So, well, we got Broadway, a little bit on Broadway, but it's Main and Mason. And kind of I-43. So that's kind of like a slap in your face. It's like, oh, because you just take it for granted what was and kind of how it is. Like when I describe, turn out where Storheims used to, Storheims is not there anymore. But we did 18 months of outreach. We had a website with over 2,700 visitors. We did a mapping program where you could click online. I think that's not active anymore, but you click online, put suggestions, bad intersection or land use should change here. We had 100 visitors to that. We had what was called a do-it-yourself kit, where you kind of took it to a neighborhood association or a church. We had 5 of those come out where they do their own little planning exercise. It's kind of built up. We did a community survey, had about 500 responses. We did 8 neighborhood planning workshops with over 120 participants. We had 10 community pop-ups. So those were at the farmers markets. Instead of trying to bring people to us, we went to them. The farmers markets, Kids Day. We went to the dog walk event. Went to the United Farmers Market. Very interesting times, but we had about 1,300 responses from that. And then we did a community vision session last April with about 60 attendees. Did that at Titletown, again, bring people where they want to be, that's what I'm brewing. And they kind of built the vision statement, which is in this document. So where we are now is we have a draft, not a final draft, but a draft. Today is the last day for comments, but we can take them for the rest of the week yet. And we're going out to the non-standing committees. The council is going to see this probably multiple times. So we kind of went to the Equal Rights Commission, Sustainability, Traffic, and some of the other non-standing committees. Senior staff, so this should be finalized by the end of the month. Senior staff will have early August to review it and make any of their big changes. And I should make a point, once we get a final draft, no more changes will happen to the document. They'll all be recorded as a separate document so the council can see what was changed. So that'll happen early August. We'll do a heavy comms push, communication push throughout August. And we do that in English and Spanish. We have hundreds of organizations and individuals that we send communication pushes out. And all that is for an open house that would happen September 3rd. Probably at the water department is what we're thinking. Big enough space. And that will be just like an open house. You go in, you can look at the boards, make comments. All those will be repackaged, sent to the plan commission the following day for a public hearing. And then from there, they can hold it, they can review it, send it off to council, it can be held, it can be whatever. So that's kind of where we are. And this plan, I guess, I don't think I can plug in that. But in this plan, there's really a lot of stuff and it's all interconnected. Land use deals with transportation, deals with traffic. Density also kicks that in. But there's 2 main sections in here. One is transit-oriented development, starts on page 32. I'll just find all the other ones. And that is kind of a heavy push in this document. The visioning session came back, the hottest topic was interconnectivity. And being able to get from point A, what people were calling origin to destinations, by foot, by bike, by car, by bus. And that was overwhelmingly the biggest push in our visioning. So there's a lot of push on what's called transit-oriented development. That's where you put higher densities around transit stops or around facilities that are already in place. You don't try to put that where there's no sidewalks. You don't want a lot of people. And then in the transportation section, it just talks about a lot of stuff. And I should probably bring it up, but it also, it talks about the functional classification of roads, how roads should be designed, where the truck routes are, where other truck routes should be or where they shouldn't be, transportation improvements, so planned roadways, bridge rehabs. A lot of this is outside of our control, the city with bridge rehab, but a lot of it is in our control. A lot of it is also, when it gets into this plan, the state and the feds have to follow it. So to give you an example, when I worked in a different community, they had a main street, it was the city of Oshkosh. They had a main street that the DOT was going to reconstruct. Their landmarks commission landmarked it, put it in the plan as a historic street. And when they redid it, they had to put the historic lighting in, they had to include the sidewalks, they had to build some retention walls. They had to follow the plan because it was adopted. If it wouldn't have been adopted, they would have just did 4 lanes straight across, maybe sidewalks as a carriage walk right next to the street. So things are important that are in these plans. Complete streets is a major element in here. There's 3 or 4 pages that's dedicated to complete streets. Also a thing called green streets. There's pages of traffic calming techniques, like in this case, speed humps, chicanes, lane narrowing, pinch points. When you're talking about Alpine, I was thinking pinch point, temporary pinch point. Where you could pinch it off into where it's looks like 4 lanes now, you can pinch it off to 2 at maybe 1 or 2 locations. And that's going to force people to go back into that lane. Not a policeman, I don't know if that causes accidents or not, but it talks about streetscaping, lighting, street trees, those type of things, benches, garbage cans, even all slow people down, anything in your field of vision. I always make the joke in Green Bay that I have the hardest time slowing down on Mason Street Bridge. I naturally want to go 55, 65 because it looks like a highway, acts like a highway. It functionally is a highway, but it's not. It's only 35 miles an hour. And I have gotten a ticket going over there before. So, I naturally just start speeding up. Same thing, like I have that feeling right now on Webster as well, where I force myself to slow down. Talks about sidewalks, and bikeways.
What part of Webster?
Everything north of University, all the way up.
That's 35, that's plenty.
It's 30, I know, but like I said, I gotta watch myself because I start creeping into 40, 45, and I'm like, wait a second, it's 35. It helps with the painted crosswalks and some of that.
So you might need to follow him out of here.
Right? Plus, I'm on a bike tonight, so it's gonna be, yeah. But what this plan also does, is it incorporates our other plans. So your safe
Bike streets or safe bike.
Yes,
Safe roads is-
there you go.
And-
That is incorporated into this. So they didn't come back through and try to redesign what we were doing. They looked at it and said, hey, what about these things? Maybe you could fix them. And they had bike planners. And then they come through and basically it's going to reference that plan as part of this plan and then have some extras. So like in this case, it's going to spit out our trail systems, our bike lanes. I've noticed the Alpine they haven't changed it. It's still the same. They are showing Mason as one. And some of the recommendations will sound sort of like this. Collaborate with WISDOT to install protected crossings, flashing beacons, and improved signage at busy intersections. And then some of these maps will show where they think some of those are. Some of the comments that we've just received one from sustainability, who made the recommendation to look at planning greenways. So passive recreational trails, make them active. So you're connecting one place to another. It's just not a recreational trail. It's actually a transportation corridor, but you're not on the street. That's difficult. That's very long term. To buy property or get easements. That also talks about, the airport, the rail, talks about waterways, and then it spits out emerging technologies like automated vehicles and ride shares. And then it also gets in the community facilities. So it's going to be talking about which roads you should be building when. You can kind of tell by the name of the planning districts what they are. The far east side is called the new growth area because it's basically rural sections of roads. We kind of, like one example in here would be Mason Street where the new Grandview Industrial Park is going in. Carnivore's out there, Drop Forge, Oben, I think it's called now, the Drop Forge, where they're developing, that's a 2-lane Mason. It actually goes back into Finger, right? Eventually that's going to need to be upgraded because those are semi trucks going through there. At this point, it's pretty minor, but it will be increasing. Finger Road is another good example in here that it's been developing. We have some coffee shops, some strip malls, daycare center, a dental office. A rural section of the street is difficult to navigate. And you heard it from the resident here tonight. At the time, there was no traffic, so we didn't need to have any of that. But as things develop, they become more and more important. It'll also have some policy recommendations in here, like don't remove sidewalks from your plats. So I kind of brought that up a second ago. Our code requires sidewalks in every subdivision. But usually you get a developer or some neighbors saying, I don't want them. Council will remove them. And then 5-10 years later, it costs 10 times as much to put them in. The developer would have paid to put them in and start. But then after that, it's assessed to the property owners. So, I mean, some of that is a cause and effect as well. So without getting into all the details of this, that's what this addresses. It addresses almost every city service. It addresses land use and economic development. And again, it's not, if you do anything, just read the recommendations in each section. They're already being modified because you're actually the last commission that we came to, so we've been doing this for a couple weeks. Just those recommendations, some of those things are, this is what we will be putting our budget towards. So when we start drafting our budget for planning, probably some for transportation and engineering, they're going to be looking and say, okay, well, what does that show? Like an example, it'll show a CIP will be referenced in our capital improvement program. So we kind of know what we're looking at for the next 5 years. So as those things change, but the things that we don't have a CIP for, we're going to be budgeting to do them based on this plan. And again, it's a lot less specific than this, gives a little more freedom to the council and to staff, but yeah. So I'm just stressing the importance of it because and lately I think this year there's been 4 or 5 lawsuits in the state of people not following their plans, and nobody has won yet. No community has won. They've lost every time.
So we know we got that email to us.
Yes.
If we in the next week wanted to give some sort of feedback or ask any questions, would that be to you?
Where's Stephanie Hummel, who is the planner who probably
She's the
sent
one
it
who
out.
shared it with you.
You want to share it?
She usually comes here. She does all our transportation planning. Yeah, so we're gonna be talking with the mayor tomorrow to go through the comments. So yours will be in after that.
So tonight's a soft last day for comments.
Yeah, well, it's a big time. We were hoping to have this to council actually already. But then we pulled back and wanted to get more input. I mean, we did a lot of public, but we wanted to get boards and commissions and other stakeholders to go a little more input. So that's kind of where
So
we
what
are.
type of information are you looking for from this commission?
If you see something in here, let's say there's a bike lane in front
You
of you.
sent that?
Pardon?
Did I get a copy of that?
It got sent.
You would have if you're on the
Stephanie
commission. you
McCullough
forgot.
sent it.
Yeah, but it didn't say like respond or anything.
I don't know what you
Well,
did. Would you share it?
Yeah, I can find it.
Whatsoever.
Yeah, it was just a OneDrive link Stephanie Hummel shared, and then you just the document directly from her Green Bay WIDECO.
Yeah, so when I saw it, I was just like, there was no direction with it, so you didn't really know.
So
what
I
to do.
didn't really look at it.
Do you want me to forward it to you?
If there was no direction in it, I
There
just
wasn't,
off
so,
it went, so.
Yeah, so James got one with a link. After you must have met, as a reminder, we need comments by Monday, July 21st, and such time lane, please share. Myself, David, or Aaron will be there.
I know I'll see this many times.
You will, you definitely
We'll
will.
try to make comments.
But we don't want to give you one that's like right now. These are comments.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So what you're looking at now won't be what the council's going to receive. It'll be a lot better, because we have a lot more eyes on it.
And then I'm sure we'll have a bunch of comments.
Oh, yeah. Some of them become personal, or, I don't want sidewalks in my neighborhood, or, which may or may not go against what other people say, and then it's up to the council to decide the direction for the city's future. And how that goes.
So I definitely want traffic, bike and pet to have their comments heard.
Yep.
When should this body of individuals get it to you?
Well, ideally by the end of the week.
The stuff from
The stuff. Yep.
Okay.
Because we'll be sending it back to the consultants at the end of this week for them to do their final redraft. Their budget is pretty much shrinking up. Again, with all that outreach, it was very expensive.
So are you sending that Friday or Monday?
We'll probably try to send it Friday, so
So
Friday afternoon.
these
Well, no,
comments
not Friday
should be-
afternoon, we're closed in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Be Friday, 11 o'clock.
So Thursday the latest, probably.
Thursday, yeah. And like I said, it's a really quick read, a lot of graphics, a lot of charts and that kind of thing. Again, trying to make it more simple and user friendly. And if you really just want to focus on any section, the vision statement, the transit oriented development, and the transportation mobility chapter. Those are the biggest ones for this group, I would think. But of course, you can.
And read the green. Because that's. a
Little
recommend-
green boxes,
green
yep.
recommendation, so if you don't read the whole chapter, read all the green.
Right, and then if you have specific areas that you really love, That's the planning district, so this is the commercial Oneida Nation Commercial District, which is part of West Mason. That's on the reservation. It'll have specific recommendations on these maps. The transportation section is gonna be a little less specific, it'll be more broad, it's gonna say things like sidewalks on at least one side of the street, I don't know if it says that, but sidewalks on at least one side of the street in every neighborhood or whatever. But then when you get to the actual planning districts, it'll zero in on specific sites. But again, about a 5-year time frame. So at that point, we can update it. What we always are saying, if we have 5 recommendations, when we hit 3 of them, we're gonna bring this back and update it and add 3 new ones. So it's more dynamic because this plan is heavy on big box. Big box retail was hot in 2000. And that's what everybody wanted. We have whole sections of the east side that are supposed to be big box. Nobody's building big box. Big box is gone. Essentially gone. So, you know, it's important to be more dynamic.
Oh, thank you so much for bringing the
Yeah,
information.
that's great.
Appreciate it.
Sure. I hope I didn't give you too much of a spiel.
No, you're
I
great.
love the rich people.
All right, so our next meeting will be August 18th. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I get a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Hey,
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you guys so much for coming this evening.
And I'll give